So we're in Perek Chav Zayin of Sefer Breisheet. We're learning Parsha Toldot, and we're in the middle of the subterfuge, in the murkiness of the encounter between Yitzchak Avinu and Esav, who is really Yaakov dressed up as Esav, who is somehow taking the place of Esav. Spoke last time that we learned last week, closed with that section from Rav Samson Fall Hirsch, who underscores the idea that precisely the imperfection of the Avot is what enables us to appreciate their greatness, to understand that they are, like all of us, a work in progress, and their greatness was not given to them as an inherent characteristic with which they were born, but something that they attained over time. So just looking in Parsha Toldot, we understand how it is that Chazal will speak about, based on a pasuk from Sefer Micha, will speak about Yaakov Avinu as having the midah, the attribute of emet, of truth. Again, it wasn't something that he was given as the natural, it might have been his natural default to be honest, etc. Way led on to way. There were other competing values that for various reasons he acceded to. Kibud Av Va'em, particularly Kibud Aim, the reality that he had on a technical level, bought the Bechora, the fact that he was very concerned, as we all should be, about someone like Esav getting a bracha that may be not undeserved, etc. And there are competing values, of course. What about the duplicity in getting dressed up? What about the fact that he was actually going to be getting the bracha? He didn't know it yet, but he's going to get the Birkat Avram at the end of the story anyway, which is the next link in the chain of the Jewish people. And you find out at the end that his father, Yitzchak Avinu, seems to have known and understood much more than he let on, in as much as the actual brachot, both to Yaakov, when he thinks he's Esav, and then to Esav, neither of them mentioned the Birkat Avraham. That only comes up at the end of the story, when everybody, the masks have come off. Everybody knows who everyone else is. That's when, okay. And by the way, you're getting the Birkat Avraham as I send you off to Padan Aram. The psukim that we're up to right now are actually the psukim of encounter. It's hard to read it piecemeal because it loses the, what should I say, the emotional punch of the fact that in this encounter there's so much back and forth. Is that you, my son? It is me, my father. Is it you? Is it you? Who are you? Let me smell you. Let me touch you. Let me feel you. Let me kiss you. There's all different examples of this, and you have the idea that all of the senses, barring the one having to do with vision, are all intact and they're heightened. And nonetheless, there seems to have been a disguise that worked. I say that again, even though some of us want to try to argue, maybe it's like really new, he was kind of playing along. Maybe on a certain level, he had an inkling, but the fact that the Torah itself testifies, Velohi Kiro, we would need at least something within the world of the Torah Sheba'al Peh, meaning from the world of the sages, to say something along the lines of that the words Velohi Kiro are exactly their polar opposite. He didn't recognize him. We'd have to find out somehow that it means something that is not that. But if we look at what's written in the Torah Shebichtav, generally is unless we have some leeway, it's not always open to as much malleability and interpretation. So if you go back, we're sort of dialing back a little bit just to see the continuity of it, and we'll make headway hopefully today. A few more psukim. Look at verse 18, chapter 27, verse 18, just to read through the pshat of the story to get a sense of it again, and then to learn it a little more in depth as well. Vayavo el aviv, vayomer avi, vayomer hineni, mi ata b'ni, vayomer Yaakov el aviv, anochi Esav bechorecha, asiti ka'asher dibarta elai, kumna sheva ve'ochla mitzedi ba'avur tevarachani nafshecha. Vayomer Yitzchak el beno, maza mihar telimtso b'ni, vayomer ki yikra Hashem elokecha lefanai. Just there. So this is first the auditory. This is the back and forth. We have Yaakov coming in. He calls his father's name. His father asks him, "Who are you?" He should know exactly who he is, but his suspicions are up, either because, as some Mefarshim say, he came back way too quickly, How did that happen? Obviously, Esav's still out on the hunt, right? By the way, the clock is ticking, right? Because it could happen that Esav's going to come home with the hunt slung over his shoulder, and he's going to say, "What's going on here?" He's going to walk into the room. So there's a time pressure, but there's a dialogue. This is the auditory. Vayomer Yaakov El Aviv Anochi Esav B'chora. I'm Esav, your firstborn. I did as you spoke to me. Please get up and sit. Kumna Shiva, right? And eat from the hunt so that you will bless me. And Yitzchak says, "What did you get so quickly?" And the answer of Yaakov is also, it's a slip. I always come back to the example that I think I read in a book years ago, that the spies from whichever country, France or Germany, whichever one it was, when they were in the opposing in World War I, when the spy was caught, so they would interrogate them very pleasantly and then suddenly smack them across the face unexpectedly, and their exclamation would reveal what their true language was, because they would revert to their what we would call in English the Mamaloshen, langue maternelle, whatever your mother tongue is. That's what you're going to say, right? So, what kind of a speech is that? Well, how does the speech pattern of Esav become one about Hashem, your God, caused it to be that I would find the hunt quickly? It's like, oh, it's Hashgacha Pratit. It's Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. Something strange. It's not how Esav talks. That's Rashi's view, and that's why the voice sort of confirmation back and forth is already, there's something wrong here. So that leads us to verse 21. Vayomer Yitzchak El Yaakov Gishana v'amushcha b'ni ha'ata zeh b'ni Esav imlo. Let me come close. I want to feel you. Amar Yitzchak bilibo, says Rashi. Ein derech Esav liot shem shamayim shagur b'fiv v'zeh amar ki yikra Hashem Elokecha. It's not the way of Esav to have the name of heaven rolling off his tongue. Something's wrong. He doesn't talk that way. He's too frum in how he talks. It's not him. So therefore, come close, he tells him, and I'll tell you why I want to feel you, because I don't trust the voice that I just heard. The language that you used, I simply do not accept. Yeah. I'm not gonna go in for it. Why not? Because it doesn't work. You said the wrong thing. You didn't, like, what's the password? And he said the wrong password. Okay, so I'll feel you, and that way I'll know. Exactly as Yaakov had feared, and exactly as Rivka Imenu had predicted would be the ruse, would be the covering, right? It's almost as if Yaakov Avinu, and I want to underscore this point, it's another example of his reluctance. It could be it was a mistake, but it's also possible that the mistake was can't you see that it's really me, Avi?
Rabbi, I'm sorry, I have to butt in now. Going back to the idea of the Midrashim and how they can conflict and stuff like that, there's the Medrash that Esav tries to be so pious with his father that he asks him about tithing salt and straw and stuff like that. So if those Midrashim can be considered, and I don't want to use the word correct, but plausible, then why would it not be plausible for Esav to put in God's name if he's trying to impress his father? He's either trying to impress his father and he manages to fool him all the time, or he doesn't. It's the idea of the methodology of the conflicting Midrashim that get to me.
I'm glad you brought it up. So let me remind you of some examples that we've come up with before. There's obviously only one historical truth, one thing that happened. Either Esav was saying to his father, tithing salt, etc., in which case the fact that he would use godly language, talking about Hashem, was all part of the ruse, right? I join with you. That's very possible. But alternatively, while Esav at some points in his life might have used those ruses, or maybe never did, and that's a medrash trying to explain how it is that Yitzchak was so taken in by his son. You're right. Then, according to this rendering, the fact that he used God language doesn't work out with the previous idea of the Medrash that Yitzchak was completely hoodwinked by his son who knew how to talk the talk, but didn't actually walk the walk. But here again, just let me remind you the examples. Either Yitzchak is 37 at the Akedah, or he's 5 or something, or 6, or he's a teenager. 3 different ideas. All of them have roots either in Chazal or in Mefarshei Mikra. Which one's right? Historically, only one could be true because you can't be 3 ages at the same time, right? But methodologically, when you're studying Chumash, the exact point of the, what should I say, the ambiguity in the question of his age opens up for us various channels of understanding. So I could read that now to this story. It's the same thing with Rivka and her age. I give the example of the ages because that's like incontrovertible. You cannot be 2 ages at the same time. Like historically, only one thing happened, right? Other midrashim, you could try, maybe you could reconcile this one with that one, right? You could try and reconcile. By the way, there is a point. Karen, give me a minute because I want to finish this point. There's, reconciliation, even like there's a medrash that says Avram Avinu was 3 years old when he recognized there's only one God. Yet there's another great case to be made based on other works of Chazal that he was in his 40s. So how does the Rambam, how does he reconcile the two? Very beautifully. When he was a little boy, he worshiped battles like everybody else. As he was getting older, he started to have questions and he broke with the rest of his society. When did he come to the recognition there's one God? When he was in his 40s. In other words, you take the 2 ages and it's like a continuum. But here, maybe it's that latter example, that there's a methodology which says either Yitzchak is totally taken in by Esav, he doesn't have a clue who he is, he thinks he's a big tzaddik, therefore he's giving him the bracha, therefore Rivka says this is going to be a huge mistake. I've tried to reason with him, or maybe I never reasoned with him, but he's not going to get it, and I can't say anything. It's like set in his mind. My son is a tzaddik. He's Esav HaTzaddik. So I can't do anything, say anything. I have to use some other means. Whether we like it or not, that's what happened. Alternatively, Yitzchak, really does know that his son is not who he says he is. He does not have a complete sense that he does have a complete sense that his son is not going to make it in the, how should I say, in the world of learning, in the world that could be construed as elitist or whatever you want to say, for whatever reason. This boy doesn't have Sitzfleisch. He doesn't have it within him. So I'll find him something he can do. You know what he does well? He hunts. Good. I'll tell him, go do the hunt for me. You're an artist, draw a picture for me, right? You're a cook, cook for me. So he set him up for success based on what he knew how to do. To that rendering, the idea that he would use God language is itself questionable. But I could also use both of these possibilities and fuse them. I could say Esav as a young boy and growing up in his teens, his 20s, and his 30s, is saying things to his father. He's asking shilas with this tithing of the salt, etc. But when he gets to be 40 and he marries 2 women who are from a foreign culture, maybe things shifted. And maybe by the time he's in his 60s, again, are they really in their 60s in this story? This is how 60-something-year-old men act with each other, these twins. I pointed out last time. Sometimes, yeah, they do revert. There's regression in the family relationship, how everybody acts in the presence of mom and dad, etc. Which it's like you're in your 60s, like get over your sibling rivalry already. But no, sometimes it's still playing out. And into that rendering, maybe in an earlier time he was asking those questions, and in a later time, remember, because there is a gap even in the Torah itself, is some temporal gap between the story with the hunt. That's around the time they're born. Yitzchak loves Esav ki tzayid b'fiv, whatever tzayid b'fiv means. Literally means he brought him the hunt. He brought him food. He was helpful. And Yaakov is, I don't know, whatever Yaakov's doing, but Esav is a practical man, brings the food. And that's where Rashi brings up, the Medrash rather, brings up this idea about the shilas. But then there's the selling of the soup. Then as decades pass, then Esav gets married to these foreign women that you're not supposed to marry from Canaan. And now years passed. So, okay, so he doesn't talk with God anymore. That's all. And now suddenly he brought it back up. How come? Again, you could explain it. Well, he did that because it was a very spiritual moment. His father said, I'm going to give you a bracha. So, of course, if you're going to give me a bracha, so I have to act the part. I put on my Shabbos clothes, so to speak. So I got to act a certain way. Or maybe not. And I'm suggesting that maybe on a certain level, what Yaakov said to his mother, maybe my father will feel me and he'll realize I'm not Esav. Maybe, hopefully, I'll be found out. So I will have fulfilled what my mother wanted me to do of going in with the ruse, but also recognizing my father finds out who's who. I did my part. So he dropped him perhaps a clue. So what did Rivka say? No, you're going to get dressed up and he won't know who you are, which is the next part of the story we'll get to in a minute. Karen, go ahead, please.
I'm just going to repeat briefly what I said last week, and that is that you have 4 characters in this story. They're family, and the whole story is about the difference between the way you present yourself and what's going on in the inside, and alliances within families that change and shift. And we're supposed to be confused by this. We've read this Parsha every year for how many decades? And every year we read it and scratch our heads from something else in here. That's the intent. And this is sadly, this is what a lot of families are like. This is a family. We get together for a holiday and everybody decides they're going to be on really good behavior, and then it just like disintegrates.
Often.
And that's So I think that a lot of our distress over what the real story is intentional, and it's going to be very, very hard to get to the real. Every year you read it, there's a different real.
Good. We're meant to feel discombobulated by the story in a certain way.
Exactly.
Right. Or as I like to point out sometimes in this very office, various people who come to meet with me, a family is an incredibly messy organism. It's alive, but it's very messy and complicated. That's a reality. That's why I try to urge everyone as we're reading the story. It's very easy to say, "Oh, Rivka," but no. We want someone sitting in judgment of us if we're zocha to be parents or siblings or whatever it is, and we make certain decisions and try to make the best decision we can. It might be it's the wrong decision, might be it's the right decision, but put yourself in that situation. In that, like you're saying, in that family setup. And there were consequences. I mean, with the consequences kept playing out throughout the rest of Sefer Breisheet as a result of this. Does it make it her fault? Does it make it Yaakov's fault? Maybe it's Yitzchak's fault for not being more on the ball. Maybe it's Esav's fault more than anyone else for not living up to, never mind his parents' expectations, to anyone's expectations. In other words, as readers and what we'd expect. He's the son of the greatest tzaddikim of the generation. That's what he did. Why does he get a pass? So, is it about throwing around the blame, or is it about saying, look, as you're pointing out, like, this is what happened. We're just going to scratch our heads and say, like, okay, we just.
Right. Each character has a different truth. And then we also have. Shifting.
But I'd like to point exactly to that word I'm glad you brought it up. In the end, the midah of Yaakov, not today, not in Parshat Toldot, not at this moment, because Emet is buried, but the midah of Yaakov Avinu is Titena Emet LiYaakov. There's a struggle here. We're gonna have to understand, where does it come around later on? But here there's really a tension. And maybe there's like a little, I'm saying maybe he's like dropping hints like, Hashem gave me the opportunity to find this food. That's why I came back so quickly. I cooked it. I have it for you. Tati, give me a bracha. It's like, this, what? Come over here. Let me feel you. And he asks the question. Yitzchak says, Ha'ata zeh b'nei Esav? We're 3 psukim away from his father, from the son saying to the father, Anochi Esav b'chorecha. Is this really you? Come here. I want to feel you. I don't trust what you're saying, how you're speaking. It doesn't add up for me. The Ramban will point out, by the way, that, how did he not understand their voices were different? So either they were twins and they had almost the same voice, or Yaakov did a great Esav impersonation. So, okay, Vayigash Yaakov. So he asked the question, Pasuk Chaval. Oh, sorry, there's a chat and I missed it. Sorry about that. Complicated family structure only works when you don't make the Avot and Imahot perfect saints. Right, that's correct. That's what we saw last week. That's what Rosar Hirsch is arguing, right? And I was pointing out that today, the last 250 years, there's a whole push, which is really a defense mechanism in many respects, by many within the Olam HaTorah to render the Avot and Imahot saints. because if they're not saints, then they're zero, as other people would like us to believe. Because if they're nothing, then why do you keep praying about the Avon Imahot? If they're nothing, what do we, why are we davening to Hashem? We're the children of so and so. They weren't great anyway. But that's the betrayal. That's the beginning of sort of the digging out of the foundation underneath. Say, well, so yet the stories are here. They're real stories. They're true stories, and they're true to who these people were as people. Right, so I try to walk in this class and in drushes, etc., more of a middle line that we can see a much more nuanced picture. But Chalila v'chas, I wouldn't want to be a person who is aiding and abetting others to see the Avon Imahot as anything less than great. But their greatness is acquired; it's not God-given. Yeah, which means that it's as Rosh Hirsch wrote, which means it reminds us that it's attainable by us. This Moshe Rabbeinu was an Anav. That was his greatness. And the fact that he had one moment of a slip, which had tragic consequences of anger and rage, means that the rest of the time, clearly he was holding it in. And that's greatness. Yaakov did not come close to Yitzchak. He came close to Yitzchak, his father. Like the Torah keeps underlining and highlighting, Yaakov came toward his father Yitzchak. Vayimushehu, Vayomer, Hakol Kol Yaakov, Vayedayim Yedei Esav. Yeah. So you're right. We come close, and I'll feel you. By the way, what Shelley pointed out before, should have probably just said it Bishmo, is the Ramban's point. He says, I'm concerned that Rashi wrote here that Yitzchak was saying to himself, come close and I will feel you to see if it's really you, because he was suspicious. How can we use the Shem Hashem? The Ramban brings up the point. He says, Esav wasn't a Russia in his father's eyes. That was the whole thing. So maybe he thought, that he doesn't, the reason why, even though it was a big tzaddik, maybe this is Ramban reconciling the Midrashim, which I don't think you need to do, but Ramban wanted to. He says, well, since Yitzchak Esav is always in the field where there's a lot of killing going on, he's worried about saying Shem Shamayim in the wrong place and the wrong environment. So therefore, he stays away from using God's name. My son is such a big Yirei Shamayim. He fears heaven so much. He doesn't want to say God's name too much, lest he take God's name in vain, or say it in another kind of a place. And the Derech HaPshat, it's he heard something was weird in the voice. The impression wasn't amazing. It wasn't the language that he used God's name. The Pshat, according to Ramban, is he just didn't understand why does that voice not sound like my child, my Esav? And that's why he says the voice is the voice of Yaakov and the hands are the hands of Esav, because he was trying to reconcile the two. Tamar, you had your hand up. I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to say that the Pshat is Hakol Kol Yaakov, that that knocks down the theory that the voices were similar, or that
right. Okay. Yeah. Right. It just begs the reason why it just begs the question a little bit still is, if you recognize there's a voice, a disparity between the voice and the tactile, there's an auditory and the tactile sensory input. Why did he favor the sensory input instead of saying like, well, a person could wear a disguise, but how did that voice change? Voices don't change. But he went with it, and in fact, that's the next pasuk. Velohi kiro. He did not recognize him. Ki hayu yadav ki de Esav achiv, because his hands, meaning the hands of Yaakov, were like the hands of Esav, his brother. They were hairy. Vayivarchehu, and he blessed him, and so he gives him the bracha. Done. I mean, the test number 2 failed. In as much as now it's still the voice, but we feel him. So at a certain level, like this is why we come to the question, on a certain level, is Yitzchak fooling himself? It says he didn't recognize him. So again, we can't argue like that consciously. He certainly did recognize him, but he wink, wink, nod, nod. Let's go through with it and do a play together. Velohi Kiro is one example. And then, of course, afterward, when it says that Yitzchak trembled, a great trembling, we're going to come to it in a few minutes, right? You want to argue that's all play acting? You'd need some kind of source somewhere for that. Again, it's a good example of where, like, well, I want to say this is what the Torah meant. Well, who are you? You know, if it's based on someone earlier, it doesn't mean that there's no room for creativity and thought in learning. But just when you want to say something that's going to actually countermand words that are literally written in the Torah, shibichtav, they're written that way, that's much more challenging. So to wit, how old was Sari Mena when she died? Using the same example because it's easy. Well, she wasn't 127. She was some other age. The Torah said she's 127 for some other reason, but she's not 127. No, you cannot say that. You know why? Because the Torah itself told you how old she is. There's no malleability to how old she is. What are the darshan? 100, like 20, like 7. That's beautiful. It's fine. But you want to argue she was 50 when she's 127? You cannot say that. That's out of bounds. Velohi Kiro means he did not recognize him. You want to say on a conscious level, but an unconscious level, he did recognize something about it. I could even go that far. You can't countermand it. And that's why when after when Esav actually comes in, he really knew the whole time. That's shaky. Tamar, and then someone else I think started speaking, but I don't know who it was because your screen's not on. Tamar, please go ahead.
I'm just thinking that sometimes when a thought or a situation is too painful, we shield ourselves from it.
Yes.
Today we call it denial.
Yeah.
Shield ourselves from it. And having shielded himself, it did come as a shock to him when Esav came in.
Sure. And to your exact use of the term, what's the denial? Is the denial that this is really Yaakov and not Esav, but it can't be that my son Yaakov is doing this, therefore, in a conscious way, it's for sure Esav. And then the recognition hits him, when Esav comes in. Or is the denial, what everyone else sees as the denial, that Esav is not who he says he is? Because on the level of Pshat, as many of us have asked, on the level of Pshat to this point, like, what has Esav really done that's so terrible? You could say, well, he married Canaanite women. Okay, so that's it. There's nothing good or redeemable about him. Terrible man. On the level of Pshat, it's harder to argue. But when you get to the level of Medrash, you get to the level of, sort of filling in the backstory or whatever it is, right, about who he is as a person. Okay, well, that's what it means. He was a hunter. He's doing other things also, sort of extracurricular activities that involve a lot of sinful behavior. When I say sinful, we're talking about major crimes, not high crimes and misdemeanors, right? And as Karen just pointed out, the guy gave up his birthright. Was that just, he wanted some soup, or was there a deeper layer of a certain, call it coarseness, certain living for the moment, a certain who cares, about that? And yes, he is a teen at the time. Shelley, you're correct. So, what did he know? And that's part of the murkiness. He was a teen. It's like the two lahavdol fe'avdalot, me and my brother trading. I don't have a brother, literally, but if I had a brother, right? And we trading our hockey cards. All right. My friends used to have this. My buddies, we're trading hockey cards and we're 8 years old in Montreal. I'll trade you your birthright for a Wayne Gretzky. Okay. No problem. You come back 40 years later, 50 years later, we made a trade, remember? But we were 8. What are you talking about? Okay. No, over bar mitzvah at 15. We were teens, it's like, but is there something more symbolic about that story? Was that enough to justify what Yaakov was doing now? As I don't know about you, but to me, it's if that's really it. So why didn't Yaakov come in? Tati, Abba, Dad, let's talk. I just want you to know we made a deal. I overheard, my mommy told me what happened, that my brother went out to get the hunt to get a bracha from me. I just want to tell you, you can get whatever bracha you want, but that I did actually buy the bechora and he doesn't care about it. Oh, well, it's a halacha. So I have to honor it. But he didn't do any of that, ever. Not before, not after, and not during, because he's disguised doing something else. So, oh wait, someone else had their hand up, or Karen, go ahead, please.
That birthright was not just a birthright. It was not just who's going to get more sheep. The birthright was something that came down from Avraham, the promise that Hashem made to Avraham of the lineage coming down. He spurned not just, I'm not going to have a bunch of goats. He spurned
Everything that came along with that. It wasn't just about
everything,
material blessing. I
exactly.
join with you for sure. Thank you.
So
Well, point well taken.
teen or not teen, that by the time you're teen or bar mitzvah age, you can't blame it anymore.
I hear it. I hear it. I hear it. I hear it. Point well taken. Shelley, please go ahead.
Ma'aseh avot simon levanim. Isn't that supposed to be one of the principles of this? Did anybody ever think that possibly Esav was afraid that with him being the firstborn, he'd be up there on some mountain getting sacrificed, and maybe this time the knife would go through? That we're knocking him. We're saying the family situations are complicated, but we're still knocking him as this awful, evil person, as opposed to this person who is just not fit for this particular job.
Could be. Except for the part where he spurned the birthright and where he married out, etc. The one thing I like what you're saying about the Yitzchak parallel. He didn't want to be, by the way, it's good. He didn't want to be Yitzchak. Therefore, he's going to be a man of knives instead of a man who has a knife put on him. Love it. I think it's great. So that's your bedtime story is, your father's tucking you in at night and telling you, and do you know I was almost killed by my father? Like, I'm going to have knives, right? So, okay, I get that. I accept.
What about the wives?
Wait, hold on. But the other side of it is, if Yitzchak's, the other piece is, don't marry women from Canaan, and that's also the story that's being told, because that's a whole Parshat Chayei Sarah, right? So that's what you go out and do. I am not my father. I'm not.
Who is he supposed to marry? Avraham went back to Haran. Yitzchak didn't do anything about getting a wife. If it's so important to not marry a Canaanite woman, why aren't the two of them going to get him and Yaakov wives that they like? They're sitting there doing nothing.
Some of them, Farshim said exactly that when we learned it. That's exactly what they said. You're right. That's what they said. That is what they said. Correct. Some of them, Farshim said, well, the parents didn't take the initiative, so he decided, I'm 40, my father's 40, I'm going to do it. Not because he wanted to. I mean, by the way, this all dovetails nicely with the Medrash also, that he wants to be his father. He doesn't want to be his father. My father was 40 when he got married. I'll be 40 when I get married. So he is following along the lines of his father, and he passed the threshold of 37 or however old. So he's not a Kedem material anymore. He got out of that when he was 15. So yeah, choliot. But I join with you. The point here is just to say that on a certain level, perhaps Yitzchak has an inkling on some deeper level, like, who is this, right? He didn't recognize him, but he still gave him the bracha. He still wasn't 100% sure. And if you look at the next pasuk, Vayomer ata ze b'ni Esav, is that a statement or a question? We said that's a question because there's a response. Vayomer ani, right? He said to him, "You are, you are my son Esav?" Question mark, and he answered, "I am." So of course, Rashi read it right away. I am. I didn't say who I am. I just said I am, meaning I am Yaakov. But you do have also another son. Again, like we said last time, it's the hand over to scratch the other ear. It's like, but they're trying to understand on a technical level what is Yaakov thinking? Because here again, he responded. Vayomer hagish ali ve'uchla mitzeid b'ni lamant v'racha nafshi v'yagesh lo v'yochal v'yavelo yain v'yesh. So is he trying to taste that the food tastes as it should? We saw previously in Rashi that apparently when you cook venison and you cook kids, baby goats, that they taste the same. I don't know. Never had both, and never had both next to each other, so don't know. But let's assume he brought him all this food, and he asked for it to come closer. By the way, you have here the hagasha means approaching or bringing something close. All right, pasuk chaf aleph geshana va'amush chabani vayigash Yaakov el Yitzchak aviv. All right, then we have vayagesh lo hagishali ve'ochla vayagesh lo. So the food is now coming close, and he eats from it. Vayomer elav Yitzchak aviv geshana ushkali b'ni, come close and give me a kiss. All right. Which is interesting. Why did he do that? Vayigash, vayishaklo, vayarach et reach begadav vayivarchehu. He smelled the smell of his garments, and he blessed him. Vayomer, and he said, Re'ei reach b'ni kerech sadeh asher bercho Hashem. Right, which is a very strange. Also, Tamar had the term last week, and I already forgot how it goes. Aphasia, no, sin. When
I think Karen had the word.
it was Karen. I blocked it twice. I can never remember the name of this term.
Not me.
The mixing of two,
Yeah.
mixing of two senses. Kinesthesia. Anyway, the mixing of two senses. He sees what he smells. Re'ei reach b'ni. See? Now, it could be see like, look here, you reader. Look here, you. Who's he talking to? There's two of them in the room. So who does he say this to? Re'ei reach b'ni kerech sadeh asher bercho Hashem. Mysterious, yeah? Ibn Ezra, he's talking to his own heart. We're hearing what he is thinking to himself. And the good smell is the smell of the field. It's aromatic. Who liked to hang out in the field? Who went to pray in the field? Vayetze Yitzchak lasuach basadeh from Parashat Chayei Sarah. Thank you. Synesthesia. Thank you. Synesthesia. I have a mental block on the word. It's unbelievable. Synesthesia. Okay. To do like a word list for myself to this year. Vayetze Yitzchak lasuach basadeh. He goes out to converse in the field. He talks to Hashem in the field. He prays in the field. It's in Chayei Sarah when Rivka's coming on the camel, remember? So what do you have here? We have here the same. Now he can smell the field. Who doesn't go out to the field anymore? Not as much. That certainly doesn't go out walking in the field by himself. Yitzchak. A deeply prayerful moment. The smell of the field has come in. Re'ei reach b'ni, right? And the idea, of course, that he came from the field. Therefore, he smells like the field. He has the aroma of the herbs of the springtime, right? That's Ibn Ezra says. This is happening this story is happening in the spring. According to Pirkei Eliezer, the Medrash says it was actually the night of the Seder. And the two kids that he brought him were the two kids, the Korban Chagiga and the Korban Pesach. I'll leave you to mull that one, to chew on that one. Pardon the pun. You can think about what that means. That's midrashic. Where does it say in the story it has to be spring? But Ibn Ezra says, well, I saw it telling you in the Pshat where it says the spring. Everything is blossoming. That's why. So he came in and the clothing smells that way. By the way, the smell of the clothing is to offset the smell of the place of the abattoir. That's incredibly has a terrible smell, right? So for consideration, Shelley, please go ahead.
How does the clothing smell like outside when the clothing is being held by Rivka? It's Esav's special clothing that he wears only to serve his father, and he doesn't even keep it in his house, maybe because he doesn't want the incense smell of his wife to be on the clothing. Yeah. But anyway, it's not the smell from outside, or it's not the smell from spring. It's been in the house, so it's got to mean something else.
Good. That might be why Rashi says that the smell here, the aroma, is not the aroma from the shetef ha'izim, from the place of slaughter of the goats. El melamed shenichnas imo reach gan Eden.
Oh, that's the Nimrod business, that he took it from Nimrod. But why couldn't it just smell like Esav? Esav leaves it in the house. He wore it the last time he served his father, and it's got somewhat of the smell of Esav.
It does. The aroma of my son is the aroma of the field. But the way Yitzchak is speaking, he doesn't mean, as Ibn Ezra would say, and you're right, your question is good. It's against Ibn Ezra. How much could have been absorbed into the how much of the aroma of the field was actually, are there pine needles all over the garments or something? Like he's carrying one of those things people used to hang in the mirror of the car, to bring a nice smell. Looks like a pine tree. Really? So Rashi says, yes, it's a spiritual thing. And if you look carefully, it's reach b'ni kereach sadeh asher bercho Hashem. The aroma of my son is the aroma of Gan Eden. Now, why is it the aroma of Gan Eden? Yitzchak's talking to himself. He gave him a bracha. By the way, we're up to 2 brachas. We don't know the bracha. Did you notice that? We had a bracha when he felt him. Vayivarchehu. Number 2, Vayivarchehu. What did he say? In each of those brachas. We don't know. Unless the bracha is what's coming next. And this one very likely is. And there's a bit of a question. Why does it go over 2 psukim? Why does it, or 3 psukim? Why does it end in aliyah here? Vayivarchehu vayomer re'ei re'ach b'nei kirech sadeh asher bercho Hashem. v18 lecha ha'elokim mital hashamayim mishmanei ha'aretz v'odam v'tirosh v'yavducha amim v'yishtachu lecha le'umim v'yikvir le'achacha v'yishtachu lecha b'nei mecha orecha arur v'varchecha baruch. End of bracha. This one sounds like it is the bracha itself, right? So it keeps going as a whole presentation. Chazal wanted us to pause at the end of Asher Baruch Hashem, pause, new aliyah. In the middle of the words, Why? I have to try to understand it. I think that was Helen trying to speak, but I didn't hear.
Yes.
Good morning.
I think good morning. I think Shira Shirim gives us a pretty good idea of what spring smells are like.
Okay.
And that might be,
Again, that's the right. Okay. And that's Rashi here quoting from the Midrashim that the Reach Tov is Sedeh Tapuchim, the field of apples. Right. And if you look in Shir Hashirim, the descriptions also, you're right, of the lushness, and they're also an allegory, right? A relationship between God and the Jewish people in the garden, etc. Bati legani, etc. I came to my garden, right? So for sure, it's related.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, obviously much more to say, but we're closing out our time together today. We'll pick this up next week. I want to try to understand a little bit better, what is the nature of the bracha itself that he gave him. How was it tailor-made for Esav hyphen Yaakov? And you contrast that with the bracha that Yitzchak will give to Esav when he knows it's Esav for sure later on. And all that and more, and a piece also in the Medrash about this idea of the aroma here of V'yarchat Rech Big Gadav. We'll come to it next week, so we're out of time for today. Adkan for today. Thanks very much. Wish everyone a great day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
And we'll see you. Anyone wants to join on Thursday? We're continuing at 9:30 in Navi, Lachim Aleph. Okay, Adkan.
Thank
See
you.
you well. Have a great day.